All right, you're all set?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, February 24th, and this is a meeting of the Peaslee Building Committee. And I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. My name is Erica Hall, and I'm the chair. Today is also like the 75th day of February, and for those of you who have kids, it's our 11th day at home with our beloved children. Second snow day in a row after a big blizzard. We're welcoming some guests with us tonight. So we have members from our OPM team, and we have members from our design team. And we also have a guest from the Office of Campaign and Political Finance who has a presentation for us tonight. And so for the presenters, just so you're aware, you should be able to initiate a screen share when the time is right. Having called the meeting to order, I would move to agenda item 2, which is approval of meeting minutes from our last meeting on January 27th.
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved by Lauren and seconded by Rob to approve the meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? And hearing none, we'll take a vote by roll call, starting with Lauren,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and Erica says yes. The motion carries. We're welcoming Jason Tate from the Office of Campaign and Political Finance to present to us tonight. So we would invite you to screen share with us now.
All right. Thank you for having me. I spend most of my time, I'm the education director at OCPF, and much of my time is spent explaining the state's campaign finance rules to candidates. We have about 2,500 political committees organized with our office. We're at One Ashburton Place in Boston. And then we have untold thousands on the municipal level, like select board and school committee, who follow our rules and use our forms. They file with the clerk. But all of these thousands of candidates, it takes a lot of time for us to keep them on the right track to disclose their campaign finance activity. Sometimes, though, we're invited to events like this where we have to talk about something that kind of feels like ethics rules, and that is ballot question elections and the use of public resources. And so we're going to get into that presentation here in just a moment, but I thought that I would show you our website so you can kind of get a feel where we come from. This is the OCPF website. I'm going to share it now. And this is the primary reason why we exist. It's for the disclosure of campaign finance activity. And most of that is done by candidates organized with OCPF. I'll show you my favorite button on the website. There are a million different places. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of where we're coming from. If I click reports by office, you'll see all the different types here: legislative, statewide. I mean, if you click statewide, you will see up to date, month to month, the various statewide candidates on the ballot. And you can see this candidate, Michael, has 5.6 million, 4.7. And this is all up to date as of the last month. This is the reason why we exist, this sort of public disclosure, where candidates and committees are raising money and spending money. And it's our job to help them post their information to the website so that the public can see it. This includes statewide candidates as well. There are many different ways that we try and display this data. So that's our main focus. However, back in 1978, there was a court case that we'll get into in just a bit that added to our responsibilities to sort of be a referee concerning ballot question elections and the use of public resources. So I'm going to go to my slideshow here. And by the way, this should take about 20 minutes or so. I can talk forever on public resources and these sorts of issues, but I'm going to give you the overview. And honestly, when you're done, you'll have a pretty good sense of what the rules are. But I've done a lot of these, and there are many of you who are going to be a little confused still because there are gray areas. There are areas in this law where I'm not going to probably have the answer right away, or the legal team at OCPF, and you won't know exactly either. And we'll have to work together. You'll have to send us your plans in detail, and we'll have to make some sort of a ruling on it. That's just to sort of warn you as we go ahead, because a lot of what you're going to hear here today is that you're not allowed to do a lot. So very quickly, I'm going to go over a couple of ground rules involving public employees and public buildings. This is helpful for you, whether you're participating in a ballot question election, or you decide to run for school committee or select board, any elected official. When it comes to elections in Massachusetts, appointed and compensated public employees have some very strict rules. They cannot ask for money, and they cannot receive money for any political purpose, 24/7, nationwide, directly or indirectly. So what does that mean exactly? It means there are public employees out there who are appointed, like school teachers, firefighters, police officers, community college workers, UMass, county jail employees. These are all public employees, and they can't ask for money or receive money. Receiving money would be the ballot question elections coming up. There's a committee in town that wants to buy lawn signs, so they have a fundraising event. And at this fundraising event, they need to collect the names and addresses of everyone who shows up and donates money. And the line's getting long. So someone comes up to a school teacher who's involved, which is fine, but to be involved, but they go up to the school teacher and say, we need to get this party started. Can you go to the door and start to collect some of these contributions? That would be great. The school teacher has to say no. School teacher has to say, I'm an appointed public employee. I can never receive funds for any political purpose, 24/7 nationwide. Most of the cases that OCPF sees involves the solicitation of funds. For example, that same ballot question committees on Facebook, and they post on Facebook, vote yes or vote no on the upcoming question. And by the way, to donate money, please send it to this address. Well, a police officer in town who really wants the new school built, he takes that post and he reposts it to all his followers. He's directly, maybe indirectly, sharing information, asking people to donate to this ballot question committee. That sort of thing would be prohibited. So as you move forward in this election, I believe you'll have town meeting, then you'll have the election after that. If you have public employees involved in this, they should be aware of these rules. And no fundraising in buildings used for governmental purposes. This one's pretty straightforward, but if someone goes into the public library, you don't want them selling tickets to raise money to buy lawn signs. So no fundraising for political purposes in buildings used for governmental purposes. So now into the meat of it, real reason why I'm here. I mentioned a court case in 1978. So what happened was in Boston, there was a ballot question for the Boston voters, and it had something to do with property taxes. And the city really wanted it to pass. So they decided they were going to spend a bunch of money, about $1 million, advocating and informing voters why they should vote yes on this ballot question. Well, some voters in town, some taxpayers said, that's not fair. We're against it. You can't use our tax money for this. And the Supreme Judicial Court agreed with the taxpayers, with the residents, saying government resources, public resources, may not be used to influence voters at an election. That the state and municipal and county governments need to have a hands-off approach when it comes to ballot questions and elections. So from that decision, we call it the Anderson decision. From that decision, and then a section of the campaign finance law right here, Chapter 55, Section 22A. And then we don't even administer this section of law. This is administered by the Elections Division, but Chapter 53, Section 18B. From these three, our office administers this portion of the campaign finance law concerning public resources, which is something of value That's not money being used to influence voters. So public resources usually involve a communication that's unsolicited. Public funds are being used or public resources, and it has to do with an election. A lot of those sorts of things are like personnel, paper, supplies, meeting rooms, copiers, papers, telephones, robocalls, which maybe Greg used last couple of days to cancel school. All of those sorts of things are public resources, and they can't be used to influence voters. We're going to get into what that means in a little more detail. By the way, I'm open to answering questions as we go along. What about town meeting? If there was something that you might label as a loophole to all the rules that I'm going to be going into, it would be this, and that is these rules I'm talking about have to do with the election. It does not have to do with town meetings. So public resources can be used to provide information to individuals voting at town meeting. However, there are a lot of sort of gray areas when you're trying to push out information. Our office doesn't want it to look like any kind of campaign. That's what they're trying to avoid. That's what we're trying to avoid, is that public resources are being used to campaign for one side or another. So sometimes it can appear to be like a campaign if you're asking voters or to vote a certain way or at town meeting, or sharing information about town meeting. So if your school district or community wants to use public resources to send information to residents concerning town meeting, I would highly recommend that you send whatever it is you plan to distribute, you send that first to our legal team. That way our legal team can take a look at the document or the communication, the text, and give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Because if you start pushing stuff out to the public, enough people know that it's wrong to do so, that they may file complaints, and then you'll have that email from OCPF saying, I understand that public resources can't be used, but we did get the thumbs up from OCPF. So with that in mind, the town meeting, it's okay in most cases to distribute information to the public concerning town meeting. Let's head into what the rules are concerning the election itself. Some common applications, I'll just give you some examples. Honestly, I haven't seen this one lately much, but it used to happen all the time. For example, let's say the vote is coming up soon. The school principal's getting nervous. They're like, oh boy, I don't know if this is going to pass. So the school principal makes a little flyer that has all the reasons why they need a new school. And they ask parents, please vote for this. It's for the kids. We have leaky pipes. The walls are falling down. And they make 1,000 copies of this flyer. They hand it to the teachers, and the teachers take it into the classrooms and they put them in the backpacks for the children, and they take them home to the parents. That's the use of paper, employee time, ink, copiers for an election purpose. That's the kind of an illustration of something that you should avoid, that you must avoid, actually. Mass mailings, you have your postage machine. OCPF, we have a nice postage machine too. We can't use that to send out information concerning ballot question elections. Email is really cheap. It doesn't cost a lot, but it is a public resource and should not be used. For example, if the school department has a list of parents, they shouldn't blast out an email to parents asking them to vote yes on the ballot question. And then a school newsletter, our legal department has said that a school newsletter is a public resource and should not be used just to push out information about a ballot question election. We're going to get into some of the things that are permitted, but the general rule here is if it's a public resource, it can't be used to influence voters concerning a ballot question election. Is it ever okay to distribute even objective information about a ballot question? Yes, if your community, and I remember I mentioned this earlier, Chapter 55(3), Section 18B, if your community adopts the provisions of this section of law, then it can, at least once, push out information, it's even objective information that concerns the election. It's something like this is very similar to the Red Book that we received, I believe, in 2024 when we voted on the MCAS and those other questions that year at the state level. It's something like that where the voter will get the booklet and they can look at the pro and the con and all those different things. So your legal counsel for the school or for the community may want to take a look at Chapter 53, Section 18B. This is your chance where you can send information unsolicited using public resources to your voters. If it's requested by the public, in other words, if I'm a resident there in Northborough and I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to vote on this. My taxes are going up, and it's but also the kids need a school. I need some information, and I send an email to the superintendent's office saying, what kind of information do you have about this school and why you need one? That information can be sent to me because I asked for it. Also, the notification of an upcoming election. Some school departments or towns might use the robocall system or maybe an email system to say that, hey, the election's this time on this date at this place, and it has to do with this issue. That can be sent out. However, and this can be frustrating sometimes for towns, but there's another state agency called the State Ethics Commission. It also has guidance concerning these notifications of an upcoming election. So if we say it's okay, but please also call the Ethics Commission to see if they have any restrictions for you in your specific circumstance. Permissible actions of appointed officials. So we're thinking about people like a town manager, a school superintendent, maybe the budget director for the town or for the school. People who are in a position where it's within the scope of their responsibility, this ballot question. They can take a position on a question. They can say, I think it should pass, or I think it should fail if asked. If they're giving a presentation to a group, they can say, and this is the reason why I think we need a new school. So they can take positions on ballot question elections. They can prepare materials. They have to prepare materials. You have to do the building plan. How much are taxes going up? How much are they? How much would it cost if it fails and we have to lose accreditation or whatever? You can prepare materials. Those are public resources. You're using time to prepare materials about a ballot question, but that's permitted. They can hold public meetings, even in public buildings. So the public can be invited to the school auditorium for a presentation on the school building project. And the public resources will be definitely used, but that's permitted. That's one of the exceptions. If the Metro West Daily News calls up, the superintendent can take that call and spend as much time as he wants on the phone explaining the situation to the reporter. That's public resource. Those are public resources, but it's permitted. And appointed officials, they can work for a ballot question on their own time. That happens sometimes, a school principal or someone getting involved with a ballot question committee. But a ballot question committee, this is a political committee that supports or opposes questions. A lot of times are formed and run by like the PTO folks or maybe elected officials like school committee members and school building committee members. They can start these ballot question committees as well. We're going to talk a little bit about ballot question committees later. At public meetings, speech is unrestricted. I do still get calls from people saying they want to file a complaint, and I'm like, okay, what's it about? Well, I went to the presentation for the new school, and the school principal got up there and wasn't even shy about it, said, everyone needs to vote yes on this thing, is my opinion. That's fine. Our law does not restrict speech at public meetings. So public officials can feel free to speak openly at public meetings. They don't have to sort of watch their tongue while they're presenting and answering questions and speaking to the public. And in fact, this would include even school committee meetings or select board meetings. People can have open discussions at these sort of government meetings. The use of public property, that's a public resource. So can ballot question or election activity happen in buildings or on the property? Generally, no, unless each side is given equal access. So just for an example, let's say there's a really big boys basketball game coming up, and someone from the vote yes side of the ballot question says, hey, I want to stand just outside the gymnasium, and as people go in, I want to hand them flyers saying vote yes. No fundraising on the flyers, but I want to hand them flyers that say vote yes. Can they do that? They can if the building administrator, probably the school principal for that building or the superintendent, says that if anyone from the no side wants to do it, then we have to allow them to stand outside. As long as everyone's being treated under the same terms and conditions, then it's permitted. Or the superintendent can say, we don't want any of that stuff happening at the gym or in the parking lot or anywhere. That's fine with us as well, as long as everyone's treated the same. We call that the equal access policy. You can post information to your school websites concerning ballot questions. So if I am a resident in Northborough and I'm not really connected, but I do know a ballot question's coming up, I'm going to sit down at the computer. I'm going to look it up online. I'm going to go to the Northborough, Southborough school department, and I'm going to expect to see something there where I can look it up and find out what's going on with this ballot question that I heard about. So feel free to post your documents and other information concerning the ballot question, Q&As, frequently asked questions, all of those sorts of things to your school website. But it shouldn't take on the appearance of a campaign website. I would expect that if I went there might be a button on the front page that says, for information about the school building project, click here. I click there, and then I'm going to see, not maps, but like drawings of what the school might look like and other things like that, and documents, maybe the language for the warrant article at town meeting, and what the ballot question information will look like. All those sorts of documents could be posted to the school website. So when this decision came down in 1978, there weren't any websites. So our office, our legal department, had to say, okay, what are we going to do with these websites? Schools are calling us. They want to post information to the website. We said it's okay as long as it doesn't look like it's campaigning. And then, I don't know, 10, 15 years later, these things like Facebook and Instagram and things started popping up, and we started getting the questions. We have a school Instagram account or Facebook account. Can information be posted to there? So it's sort of right in the middle where you're not allowed to push out or distribute information unsolicited to the public, but you are allowed to post information that the public can go find. Social media is sort of in between, and we have said that so long as it doesn't look like it's campaigning and the information being posted is pretty much objective, then school departments and other government agencies, they can post information on their social media pages concerning a ballot question election, because the people finding this on the website, they're going to that social media platform and they are looking for information on that platform, or they're following that platform. So we have said that it's okay. If you want to post something on social media that you think might be in the gray area, like I'm not sure that this is really counts as just trying to provide information to residents, feel free to send that information to our legal team. Before I move on, I'll show you how you can contact our legal team real quick. So from the front page of our website, ocpf.us, we have this About tab. It says Contact Us. You can reach out and contact anyone here on our legal team, Sarah, Maura, Everett, Dan, or Mike. Feel free to reach out to them. They'll be able to answer your questions. They do it all day long. Government email may not be used to send information about ballot questions. We have covered this. The robocall system. Our office has issued the opinion that your robocall system in town can be used for the time, date, and place announcement that we talked about before, using email and other methods. But it can't be used to advocate for a ballot question or to influence voters in any way. We recommend that if you do send a robocall, that you check the script with OCPF, as we mentioned right down here, and also check with ethics again. I know it's frustrating having to check with two different state agencies, but that's the way it's broken down in responsibility over the years between our two agencies. So what I've talked about here so far is the use of public resources to influence voters. So the way the system is set up, it's intended that public resources not be used to influence voters. In fact, private funds should be used through what we call a ballot question committee. This is a campaign finance report. Some of you may be elected officials on here, also serving as building committee members, but if you're an elected official, you recognize this form, the M102. That's the standard campaign finance form that all municipal candidates and committees use to file and disclose their campaign finance activity. In this case, it's being used for a ballot question committee, the vote yes on the new school committee. You can see dates here where all the activity, money raised and money spent between those dates. It's filed 8 days before the election and then 30 days afterwards. So if there's a ballot question election in your town, which I'm told there is, a ballot question committee can be raising and spending money right now. It's not disclosed to the public, however, until 8 days prior to the election, and then they file a final report. It should be a final report 30 days afterward. To organize a ballot question committee, it's not that difficult. It requires 2 or more people or entities to pool resources. And a ballot question committee would just file a simple form. It's called the M101 form. It names a chair and it names a treasurer of the committee. And that form is filed with the town clerk in which the question is being asked. So if it's several towns, then it will be filed with all those town clerks. And then a bank account is opened because you can't commingle funds. But then this ballot question committee can start raising money. It can raise unlimited amounts of money from any source. So if you're familiar with candidate elections in Massachusetts, they can't take money from corporations, or there are lots of limits. They can only take $1,000 from an individual, and all sorts of different rules for candidates. For ballot question committees, they can take money from just about anybody and in unlimited amounts and then spend that money on things like mailings, lawn signs, boosting social media posts, maybe paying for a function hall to have a community rally or something like that. That's what these ballot question committees are used for. I'm going to show you one little hot tip from the front page of our website, ocpf.us. Just about everything I talked about here today is available in our toolkit. I'm going to type in toolkit. There are other ways to find this, but this is the easiest way for me. You type in toolkit, and it says here, Municipal Ballot Question Election Comprehensive Guide and Toolkit. And it has to do with ballot question elections. We started off this presentation today talking about part 2. Public officials often asked about the extent to which they may be active in campaigns to support or oppose questions. And that's what we talked about here today. And then part 1 is the ballot question committee. So if you need to review this or you want to share what we talked about here today with others, I would recommend typing in toolkit into our website and sharing this document. I'm going to scroll down to part 2 just to show that I've just been stealing all this information from this document. But if I go to part 2, it says public employees, government buildings, and public resources. A lot of what I talked about here involved what public officials may do. I talked about public meetings and taking a position and analyzing the impact. I just sort of went down this list, but with a slideshow. So that's the presentation. And I can stick around for as long as you want to answer questions before you move on.
Jason, thank you for the presentation. At this time, are there any questions from members of the committee for Jason? Sean?
Yeah, just by serving on the committee, are we deemed?
I think he locked up.
So Sean
He's at-
froze for a minute. Could be all the plowing he's been doing. He froze. Anyway, I think the question is by virtue of the fact that we have been appointed to this committee, in what category does that place members of this committee?
Yeah, so when we look at a public official who's appointed, they have to be appointed and compensated. So that would, if you are compensated for being on this committee,
We are most certainly not compensated for
You
being on this
usually aren't.
committee.
so you can solicit and receive funds. You can start ballot question committees. You're not prohibited from doing that.
Sean, you froze halfway through that question, but I'm hoping that answer made its way to you. Any other questions for Jason?
So how does it play for like Mike, Lauren, myself, who are elected officials?
Elected officials usually take the lead on a lot of this. You can start ballot question committees. You can use some of the funds that you may have in your campaign account and support the ballot question. Maybe pay for a boost on Facebook saying, "Hey, everybody, I'm an elected official. Everyone should vote yes or no, however you lean." Yeah, you're pretty much unrestricted. Same as on the state level. A lot of times these state ballot questions are proposed. We might have like 11 or 12 this year. But there were elected officials 2 years ago who were doing stuff concerning the MCAS, spending money, doing speeches, and all of that is okay. But even elected officials cannot use public resources to influence voters. So that's how it is.
So the public resource, so for example, if we were going to have, if the school district, they can post something on their website that basically talks about just overall the project. But if we wanted something that's saying like a vote yes, that has to be a completely separate domain. It can't use their website at all or anything like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, public resources cannot be used for the vote yes portion of it. That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jason? Jason, thank you for presenting to us tonight, and thank you for sharing the resources. It's useful information.
My pleasure. Take care. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We find ourselves at agenda item 4, which is the update from the owner's project manager, which flows into an update from our designer. So I would welcome a screen share at this time, and Karina and team.
Thank you, Erica. So I'll start with the OPM update and then I'll pass it over to Vince and Jennifer, who will talk about the design portion of it. All right, so since our last meeting, we've continued to develop the PDP binder. So we've been actually working with the town. We put together a Word document with the information that we require from the town just to get that process going. And it's been great. It's been a very collaborative back and forth to get this information over to Plansburg, who will then put it all together and then send out the binder. PMA has sent over their portions of it. The schedule was one of the submissions that we needed to provide for the PDP and a couple of other items, but we continue to put those together and send them over to Plansburg, who will again put it all together and then we'll review for submission to the MSBA. That submission to the MSBA is due April 2nd. And so we feel we will make that date basically. Next up is update schedule to meet MSBA required dates. We did meet with, which you'll see later on, we met with the MSBA on January 15th, and there were some dates that they wanted us to edit on the schedule that we submitted to them. So we did make those edits and resubmitted it to the MSBA to align with their schedule. We submitted propane number 2 for reimbursement to the MSBA. And then we did also submit a BRR to change the budget for the project. So as you guys know, originally our budget was the 900,000, and we increased it to the 930 with the appropriation from the school committee funds. And we did send that over to the MSBA. And we also went into the MSBA website and made those edits to our budget. We did also submit the monthly report. We do those on a monthly basis. And we also share that with the town so they can have it for record. We did, like I said, do a kickoff meeting with the MSBA on January 15th. That went very well. They just basically informed us on the expectations during the PDP process and the PSR process. Next up, we continue to assist the designer with site visits. We have emails going back and forth whenever there's site visits that need to happen, but I will let Lansberg get into more detail about those visits as they're the ones who have been going there. And then lastly, we've been assisting with coordinating meetings, the design meetings with the leadership team during design. Any questions from anyone?
Thank you, Karina.
You're welcome. We're moving along. We should have the PDP submitted by, like I said, April 2nd, and then we'll move on to the next step, which would be the PSR. Jennifer and Vince, I'm not sure which one of you is gonna go through.
I'm up first.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, Kent was tied up at an educational conference, so you have myself and Vince doing the review tonight. So we'll start with just an overview of where we are in the preliminary design program process. This phase is really all about information gathering. So on one hand, Vince has been kind of helping to orchestrate and organize all of the consultants going out to site to investigate, inside, outside, wetlands, structure, traffic studies, etc. So we're collecting those reports and reviewing that information to help inform our planning options down the road. On the other hand, we've kicked off the educational visioning. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a shadow day where we spent the morning kind of quietly observing teachers and students in action. And then in the afternoon, there was a larger group visioning session where we got some really great feedback, which I'll go through in a few minutes. We're going to be continuing with the educational visioning. There's more scheduled, and that'll help really shape some of these test fit options that we're looking at for the site. So that's kind of where we're at right now, kind of digging into these planning options. And then in parallel to that, also looking at mechanical options and a sustainability strategy, as that'll play pretty heavily as well into, costing and siting, etc. So I'll pass it over to Vince and he can give an overview of some of the mechanical options that we're looking at.
Great. So at this point, yes, what we want to do is we want to really home in on what kind of mechanical systems that we're looking for the school. And so we've presented here 4 different options. Top 3, option A through C, they're all electric. And then the bottom option D, is a kind of a hybrid between electric and gas. So I don't know if you can really read, I apologize if you can't read the purple line at the top, but basically the first option A is shows as the most expensive as first cost. So the most expensive first cost, this is a ground source heat pump using geothermal wells. So there'd be a small geo well field that have to be drilled, and that's really what's accounting for the first install cost being considerably higher. But the good news is that, and it could be, the potential is that there could be some incentives and rebates. We don't know at this point. That has to be studied. This is, several years down the road potentially. So, but that could, potentially mitigate some of the cost of that install for the initial install cost. But the good news is also is that geothermal is the most efficient and the least operating costs over time. Then
is that covered with the MSBA though, or is there they don't cover that amount?
No, they won't cover that. This is just through the these incentives are separate from that. Option B is similar, that it's this is instead of it's a VAV displacement system, meaning that it has really low volume air that comes
Actually,
in.
Vince, can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
Kelly, did I understand your question? Would they cover the cost of the geothermal mechanical system?
Yes.
Yes, they would. They
So
would.
that would be like 100% of the cost that they would, well, whatever our
Yes.
percentage is, but it wouldn't be like,
And the incentive would come afterwards,
and then the
back
incentive
to the
would be
town.
after it. But it's not like that. They would be like,
No,
no, we'd only give like 10% of the 20 of like,
you'd get the Northborough
you get,
reimbursement rate.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were talking about the full payment of that. Under the VAV displacement option B, this would be the air source heat pump system. So instead of a ground source like the first geothermal wells, this would be the air source version of that. Again, a little bit less costly to install, also a little bit less efficient, but also maybe potential for some incentive rebates from the utility companies. And then we're looking at option C, the third one, which is a variable refrigerant flow system that has the lowest install cost, but again, a little bit much more operating costs and a little bit more long-term costs. So those are the three all-electric versions. And then we have option D, which is a hybrid of the air-cooled, air source heat pumps and natural gas boilers. And then with that version, it's again, middle of the road. But with this one, you would have to install solar panels in order to comply with code because it has a fossil fuel component to it. So in that case, and then again, not knowing for sure how much solar panels would be on that available it would affect, the overall operating system. So the energy use index or this energy use intensity is something that utility companies look at for their rebates. And so without knowing for sure how much solar panels, we don't know the total EUI on this particular one. But if we feel that there is interest in the town at all for pursuing any of the geothermal options, we would recommend using that cost initially in order to start out with the most expensive option at this point. Next slide.
What is the longevity, the years of each of these options? Like, is one like indefinite? Is one like a 10-year or 20-year replacement? Like, what is the replacements of these types of things?
I'm not completely, familiar with the extent of these things. I know that, with a geothermal well, that's pretty, long term. With the other ones, like I said, the next slide will kind of answer that question a little bit more, Jennifer. So with that, with these four options, we will be doing a life cycle cost analysis for all of those systems. And that would be the point where we would be able to look at that and, determine how long each of these systems would be, viable. So those are the questions that we would be looking at too, from input from the town to determine, what are your most concerning things? I mean, we have a list here of a variety of ones that you might consider, but usually it's long-term maintenance. How long do we have to maintain these systems and what's the easiest ones to maintain? Another one could be like the potential for these incentives and tax credits. How are those applied to these options and how does that affect it overall? So there's a number of questions that, you can consider into looking at, but we don't really know which of those options at this point is really the best option. I mean, you can have some thoughts to look at, but this would be a one way to kind of verify and determine what's the best option, because it might not always be the lowest cost option at initial cost, at least. Okay. Next slide.
one question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Going back actually to the slide that laid out the options, could either yourself or even Greg kind of re-explain the answer to Kelly's question about MSBA reimbursement and cost, just to kind of square that with that first row that says first cost and the dollar signs?
Yeah. And in my mind, the way that this works is that there's two components to it. There's a site component to this because of the wells. And then there's also the component that works inside the building. The MSBA does reimburse a certain amount for site work, and they also would reimburse that portion of that that's in the building. I don't know, Greg, if you had something different in your
No,
understanding.
that's accurate. So for the most part, the site work and the mechanical would be part of the overall reimbursement equation.
Site work
It's a
and
little under, I think it's like 49% or 50% at this point.
And when you say mechanical, what exactly do you mean by that? Like
HVAC.
the equipment itself,
Yeah.
or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then is that related to that all above options, fossil fuel free, comply with additional 3%? Is that what's that?
So you get points for being more efficient. So you can increase your reimbursement rate. So example, it's, I don't have the exact number of points, but you can get an additional 2 to 3 points for example, geothermal well, high efficient mechanical system.
Greg, my recollection is it maxes out at 3, Mike, and that's how it's kind of tiered is as you go and you can build. It's anywhere between 2 and 3 with geothermal is my recollection from last time we went through this process.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll follow up
I'm
with.
I'm looking up the reimbursement right now.
Yeah,
It's-
typically these are all really good options. I agree with the assessment that a geothermal system is the most upfront, cost intensive, but I think there's a lot of other components that go into this outside of MSBA reimbursing. Just if a building loses power, how do you size an emergency generator to account for the electrical load that it would take to do something as basic as keep your heat on? Whereas a hybrid system, it introduces a solar requirement for the current code, but I think that might be something that we should give consideration to when the time is right.
Agreed.
And just so everyone knows, that reimbursement rate is 48.68.
Okay, sustainable. So again, and sort of going back towards some of the questions that you were kind of touching on right now, here's what the MSBA requires as part of their requirement. So as a minimum, the MSBA is going to require that the project receive a silver rating from LEED under the version 4 program. And then in addition to that, they'll have to achieve 3 out of the 7 points basically in material resources, and then indoor air quality type of environmental quality, the IEQ or EQ here, low emitting materials, and indoor air quality assessment. So those are other things that are also as a minimum, as a prerequisite basically for the MSBA participation. And then the school must meet the stretch code and be solar ready. So the Northborough is a green community, so that would be requirement anyways. And then Keith, you mentioned extra percentages. There are three percentage increase for reimbursements if the project follows the specialized opt-in stretch code. So a little bit more stringent requirements for that. And then you could follow the net zero pathway, the all electric pathway, which is kind of what we've been using as a baseline assumption, and then the mixed fuel pathway. So, and if you want to go for an additional 1%, even again, so a total of 4%, that would be again, a little bit more stringent requirements for building materials and indoor air quality and things like that. So those are the things that you can get some up to 4% from the MSBA if you follow these a little bit more stringent energy efficient requirements. But then, we talked a little bit about incentives. We don't know that these are going to be available, but currently there's the Inflation Reduction Act that provides a significant tax credit for the geothermal system. And that includes more than just the wells. That includes the basically infrastructure to get the heating and cooling from the wells all the way to the register. So there's a significant amount of money that could be returned back if this was still available at the time. And then another one that's currently out there is the Mass Save. Again, utility companies offer incentives for really high energy or high energy efficient buildings. So if you can produce a building that has a really low EUI, that energy use index we talked about below 25, this would be required a all electric system and then no gas. So those are potential options to offset some of those costs from those systems. Again, life cycle cost analysis would have to factor into some of this as well.
Just a quick question before we move past this. These are being evaluated for new construction projects. We haven't made a decision at this point whether renovation is still a viable option based on where the cost models come back. Do any of the lead or incentive requirements change if we elect to pursue a renovation?
Again, the lead requirements, for renovations, all these that we're looking at right now is we have to compare them sort of the same, right? I mean, if we do a renovation, we have to have comparative costs. So the idea would be that we're going to look at these systems regardless of whether there's a renovation or a new building. That would be the intent. So that's a fair comparison. And then, like I said, if you're using the building, obviously then there might be additional credits for reuse with LEED. But as far as how we look at these systems right now, we just really want to be comparing them equally, whether it's a new addition or renovation. Or just,
right. What version of LEED would you be pursuing, and how does MSBA incentivize that? Is it
right. So right now, like I said, the incentives under the first slide there was the LEED version 4, and that this slide is kind of showing that as a minimum, the silver is what we would have to that red box around the silver. That's the minimum that we'd have to have for MSBA, and then achieve some 3 of the 7 indoor air quality and material resources for that. That's under version 4. Right now, version 4 is going away, but we can still register for that up until June 30th of this year. And then we also have the option to do LEED 5, V5, which is currently available. But we would probably recommend right now, pursuing LEED 4 and trying to get that registered now before June 30th. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now for the LEED.
I think it would be interesting for the committee to understand what the differences between LEED 4.0 and 5.0 are, so we can make an informed decision.
Yes, and I think I don't really want to go through it right now because I'm not completely versed in what the difference is between V4, but I could tell you that V4 is more or less a more energy efficient, looking for energy efficiency and water usage, and V5 is going to be more about carbonization and reducing carbonization.
Robin, we did also get an email from the MSBA for us to start registering for the V4. So we can also find out from them what their thought is on one versus the other and what it will be incentives-wise from the MSBA.
Yeah, they seem to be pushing the electrification pathway as opposed to the net zero, if they're stressing carbon in V5.
Right.
So Vince, is it fair to say that this evening is a high-level presentation of mechanical systems that then through Erica we'll get a working group to really evaluate these in more depth and come up with a pathway that the committee thinks is correct to get at least initial cost estimates?
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, we're not trying to sway anything one way or the other. We're just trying to present what we have what we've looked at so far, and what we would like to get, feedback from the town to help push this into the direction that that you'd like to have. So really, this is all we're trying to give you some overview.
Good, thank you.
Okay. All right, I think that's the end of this slide. So
Now I'm kind of conscious of the time. I know it's just about 8 o'clock. Are we okay to keep going, or is there a hard stop at 8 o'clock?
There's not a hard stop at 8 o'clock.
Okay. So I'll do a brief update on the educational visioning thus far. As I was saying earlier, we had a shadow day and then a large group visioning session. Some of the key project goals and priorities that have come out of there so far was that there was a desire to instill a sense of belonging and inclusion for all. Looking at the whole child experience, mental, physical health and play-based learning, building in flexibility so that spaces can adapt over time, expanding learning, looking at, outdoor learning spaces or group teaching. Connection was also a key priority. So fostering connections between school and family and community, and then ultimately creating a safe and comfortable environment for all. Next steps will be to go to the school tours so that the group can get a sense of what other schools are doing, how they're operating, some different spatial configurations, and just overall get inspired. And then more visiting sessions and a program workshop in March. So one of the pieces outside of the educational visiting is understanding the capacity and opportunities and limitations of the existing building. So that was a lot of the work that's been happening so far in the process. And Vince can sort of walk us through where the existing building stands.
right. So because, we are going to be looking at test fits for the different, for this building as well. So we need to understand how the current building is relative to, the systems that we would doing. So, we have to look at a renovation or a code renovation of the existing building. And then where can we, potentially use this building and how do we best use it under the circumstances with what we've learned so far. So as, Karina has mentioned before, we've had a group of people, of our consultants go out, structural engineering, mechanical, plumbing engineers, and civil engineers as well. But in this case, what we've done is we've kind of put this chart together to show the different systems, a percent of cost of what it would cost in a new building, and then the existing building kind of as a comparison. So, structurally, the building may be structurally usable, but there are going to be some things that might need to be updated, reinforcements and so forth, to meet the new, seismic codes and things like that. Exterior walls, same thing. The walls, pretty solid, but they don't meet the energy code for efficiency. So some of these things we can reuse and salvage, but other systems like doors and windows, roofing, floor finishes and ceilings, a lot of those are going to have to be replaced and not really be usable. Same thing with electrical, HVAC, and plumbing. So this just is kind of a visual to give you a sense of how much of the existing building would be really usable or salvageable versus, what would be replaced in a renovation. And then if we were to do, an addition and maybe have to, do some little bit of demolition, then, a lot of that work is going to be, also increasing some of these costs. So this is just kind of a visual to see, what's there that's usable and what's not. And as far as like fire protection, the current building doesn't have fire protection. Current building doesn't have an elevator because it's one story. So we would have to kind of consider some of these things, for the future, project. So again, we're just going to look at different options at this point. We're just high level, just getting a feel for what's, what the building could contain. So
Is that saying 36% of it is
Salvageable.
acceptable or
That's
adequate.
Correct. Salvageable or adequate. So, and that's again, like I said, if we have the superstructure says it's salvageable, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be work necessary to maintain it. Same thing with the exterior wall. Something will have to be done in order to stabilize it for seismic and so forth. Okay.
And then Vince, the other overlay is the educational plan. So although the current building is salvageable or adequate, the next layer of questioning is does the educational program fit within the footprint? Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Yes, that's accurate. And this is where Jennifer takes over.
A good transition.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you for the question.
So the next step is taking what is salvageable and looking at various combinations of renovation and new construction with the different potential occupancies, and then just a general full building renovation, no addition as the baseline. So looking at the top, the MSBA requires us to look at that, bringing the whole building up to code as the baseline for comparison, even though the 45,000 square feet does not meet the MSBA space standards for the design enrollments being considered. We still need to go through the exercise so that it's an apples to apples comparison. In the B series, looking at the 310 students plus pre-K, overall, we'd be looking at 66,500 square feet. So you can see the various combinations. If we reuse the entire building and renovate it, bringing it up to code, then we're still adding almost another 50% to meet the MSBA space standards for that enrollment. And then working our way down to 50%. We're keeping 50% and then basically adding twice that much to get our overall total. All of those renovation addition options would require a swing space, which is a very important factor to keep in mind in terms of, for example, finding other space in the town or renting modulars, and then impacts to construction schedule, etc. So any of these renovation additions of either enrollment would require swing space. The option before, where it's fully new construction, would be more straightforward, and there's enough property that we would not need to be building over top of the existing school's footprint. So no swing space would be required. So that one positive there. It's kind of a much simpler strategy in that way. For the other higher enrollment at 625 plus pre-K.
Jennifer, can I ask you a quick question? Is there a difference in the renovation construction cost versus a new build? Or is that a question for another day?
That is the question, I guess, that we're looking at. Yeah. So, as Vince was going through the various parts of the existing building that would need to be brought up to code or supplemented, or just that aren't there, that need to be provided. So that all has to be investigated, and how much, roughly per square foot that might be to bring the existing school up to code. And then we look at, how much a new build would be, weighing that with, construction schedule and swing spaces. That's all going into this cost analysis that we're trying to put together. So these are all of the different variations. We did the same exercise for the 625. And you can see, even if we maintained the entire school and just renovated it, we'd be adding more than what's already there to meet those space requirements. Were there any questions on this page before we go on?
One question, Jennifer. In the A and B series, it has K through 5. The C series, I assume that's grades 3 through 5.
Correct.
Was okay. And just curious, is there an explanation why you would go K through 5 versus 3 through 5? Obviously, you've got a much larger building for higher student count, but does that assume a greater district-wide change?
Yeah, so Mike, this would be having neighborhood schools uh, K through 2, and then a centralized school 3 through 5. So all of Northborough's third through fifth graders would attend one school. So it's a kind of a shift in neighborhood schools to a more centralized school option for the town.
Okay. And then so is that an already sort of decided or like that is it like so who makes that decision?
So when we submitted the statement of interest, uh, these are the options that we have to study. Ultimately, the community should be making the decision, and under the leadership of this committee, the Peaslee Building Committee. The Building Committee will have to select a preferred design,
Hmm.
and that preferred design could be any of these options, but the committee will make that final decision.
Okay. So kind of me just and I'm not necessarily arguing one or the other. I'm just trying to understand it. Um, Kind of thinking of if you build a larger building to maybe be able to consolidate, this wouldn't be that larger building wouldn't be consolidating down a school building. You'd still be keeping the other school buildings.
So we would, I think, under this scenario with
Mhm.
3 through 5 and pre-K, we would be reducing by one building.
So you'd
So
still be reducing by one building.
so one of our neighborhood schools would be reduced.
Okay. And then kind of just me simply kind of thinking about it, simply as in I'm simple. Um, you wouldn't say, okay, you lose a building, so you have 625 K through 5 in this. So basically just a larger neighborhood school.
No, because it'd be 1,000. We would need a school much larger than the 100,000 square foot to house all
Okay.
of our students.
Okay. So that would space wise, that does not make sense. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
And I think I'll just have one commentary too. This is where community input is really important in terms of criteria. We need to move forward a project that will pass town meeting. So soliciting input around the criteria and what's the community's threshold. Is it consolidating schools? Is it cost and tax impact? What is it that people are going to kind of choose as their North Stars for a project? That's information that we should start gathering so that when this committee is deciding on a preferred design, you have kind of a sense of the appetite of the community for a project it can support.
So Greg, just I wanted to add, because we skipped over it a few slides before, was the potential community forum that we intend on scheduling for beginning or middle of March. I think bringing it up during this meeting may be a good idea.
Yeah, and I would say that these are lessons learned from the Neri building project. Um, so I think we need to have a conversation as a committee about how are we going to get broad feedback from the community. Our forums weren't really well attended. Maybe in Northborough they will, but from my experiences, people typically don't show up until it's really close to the vote. So I think making sure that we have a broad cross section, great input around a direction for the Peaslee Building Committee is really essential. And now is the time to start getting some sense of what direction the community would like.
Could there ever be a poll question at the town meeting? Like, which would you vote for? A new school, this, that, whatever, like just a broad,
Yes, it could be, what are your, top 5 priorities or
yeah,
projects?
could we somehow work that into the town meeting somehow? Because the people who are showing up at this town meeting are going to be the people that are ultimately going to be voting.
Thank you, Kelly and Greg. And I would say, looking at the time, as the communications subcommittee kicks off, one of the charges to that subcommittee is soliciting input and making sure there's information with integrity. So that's a good point for that subcommittee to examine. Jennifer?
So we're just about done here. This is just a kind of a example of some spatial studies from another project, but this is what we're in the process of generating based on the feedback that we're getting between the educational visioning and how we might be reusing the existing school. So different ways of um, different adjacencies, separations between collaborative spaces, academic spaces, community spaces. And then going a little bit more micro, how does circulation work with collab spaces, with academics, teaching spaces, special ed? These are just examples of diagrams that we're going to be generating and making project specific. And we look forward to sharing updated diagrams once we have all of those, the academic visioning, the educational visioning sessions completed. So that's something that'll probably be in the next meeting. But that's just a brief update onto as to where we are.
Thank you very much, Jennifer and Vince. Are there any questions for Jennifer and Vince on the design update agenda item? Hearing none, I would move forward to agenda item 6, which is the review and approval of the invoice packet that was shared with you prior to this meeting. The invoices go through our invoice review committee. I would welcome any comments from the invoice review, sorry, not a committee, a team, invoice review team, or a motion.
Being part of that team, I have reviewed and am comfortable with the submission as proposed. So I would make a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
Rob moved and Mike seconded approval of the invoice packet that was submitted. Is there any further discussion? In hearing none, I would take a vote by roll call, beginning with Sean. And Sean, I'm just going to unmute you for 1 second.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I would approve.
Thank you, Sean. Mike,
Aye.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
and Erica says yes. The motion carries. Agenda item 7 deals with subcommittee reports. At this time, I'm not aware of any subcommittee reports. The communications subcommittee, now that we've had a presentation from the Office of Campaign Political Finance, can begin to meet, and so that's in the works. Agenda item number 8 is any items of new business. Do any committee members have any items of new business to bring to our attention tonight? And hearing none, I would now open for public comment. I'm looking at the participants. Is there any public comment? None at this time. So with that, I thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Thank you to our presenters and to everyone who's working on behalf of our town and our committee. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved by Kelly and seconded by Mike to adjourn. Any discussion? And hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote, starting with Sean.
Affirmative.
Mike,
Aye.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
and Erica says yes. We'll see you next month, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everyone.